the first pick.
And we are back with another episode of On the Clock presented by Just Baseball. No Tyler, no Jared today, just me. I am accompanied by former FIU, former LIU pitcher, Shane Tucker. How are we doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm excited to talk. So let's do it.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to have you on. This is a little bit different than what we conventionally do, but have been really looking forward to this over the last week since we got in contact. Let's just start off with how we even got in contact. You posted a thread right after your guys' season ended, and it was just about your whole baseball journey, and so many people connected with it. People like myself that are former players, a bunch of former players that maybe didn't see the success on the field, that their work off the field, they would have liked it to. It ended up getting almost 800,000 views and really like overnight just blew up and you got a bunch of traction from a lot of different people. And now you're sitting here with me, which like 2 weeks ago may have never been a thing. So first off, like what made you post that thread? Did you just want to get your story out there and kind of show that you can get through really hard things in an environment where everything is difficult, like collegiate athletics?
I think it's so important to analyze that, when I first posted that, I wasn't attempting to try and go viral because I thought I was just telling a story of a human experience. I just wanted to tell the story of, yes, all of us go through difficult things. And just because I got my master's degree and had a good ERA doesn't mean that I actually was better than everybody else. It just meant that I was a human just like everyone else. And I worked through those successes using tools. And I wanted to make sure that the most people possible potentially could get something out of my story. So I posted with the intention of, let's help one person. Let's find one person who reads this story and relates it back to them. And maybe the reason that it went viral was because I told a story of, again, a human experience that we all go through and everybody could relate to it. So.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that you help more than just one person because a bunch of people have been reaching out to you, I'm sure, about this. But just for some additional context, if you don't follow Shane on Twitter, I posted his whole baseball story starting off being diagnosed with a generalized anxiety disorder. And when you were coming out of high school, we were kind of in the COVID era. You came out of high school in 2020, I believe. So you were looking at a Division II school in New York. You're from Washington, D.C., for people who don't know. Talk us through a little bit of your actual journey coming through high school and then even just getting into college, because that ended up being a little bit more rocky than you probably anticipated when you committed in the fall.
Right. So I had actually gone to a 4-year public high school, which sounds crazy nowadays among baseball players. So I continued through 4 years. My senior year, COVID hit. So I didn't have senior year baseball at my high school. I committed to a D2 my junior year from a random tournament in New York. I didn't do any of the perfect game showcases, really. I participated in a few tournaments over the years. So this identity that I kind of created for myself was that I wanted to be the best wherever I was. Now, I think a lot of kids go into college with the mindset that they can be an immediate difference maker. And there is a huge shift when you actually get to college. When I was the day that I was about to leave to go to my Division II, we all got on a Zoom and we were all called together. And the coaches said, "Hey, I'm sorry to tell you guys this, but we don't have sports anymore." And that was kind of the start of my college career. A lot rockier than a lot of other people. I was fully masked up. COVID was rampant, and I now no longer had a baseball team that I was on. So, that was the catalyst to me finally looking at my life and then saying, there are some things that I can't control that we have got to realize. And that is when I first saw a therapist at LIU, was because when I got to LIU, Division I baseball is a whole different animal. Everybody is the best player from their high school team. And I think that we as a society need to realize that we can have high standards for ourselves while also being amongst each other. So as I continued through LIU, I started developing more practices through therapy. And we've kind of gotten to a point where I got Tommy John. We've talked about this off camera before, but my junior year, I got Tommy John, and I experienced more anxiety. I had to go back to therapy, and then I took one more year to go to FIU. Had the worst fall of my career. Came on, decided that I wanted to stick through it. Went back to therapy, and yeah.
Yeah, so talk us through a little bit of your journey at LIU. How did you end up there once everything got canceled at NYIT, I believe the school was? And so obviously it wasn't necessarily in the fold when you were looking at schools, but then all of a sudden things get canceled and you end up there. How did you end up there? And then what was the process like after a couple of years and then getting Tommy John, getting from LIU to FIU?
So my transfer process was a lot different than a lot of kids. My transfer process was more forced in the beginning. So for me, I didn't have many options. A mid-year transfer from a Division II school that never actually started their season. I had no proven statistics. I had nothing to go off of. I had reached out to my coaches at my previous school at NYIT, and we decided that the best course of action was to follow the pitching coach to LIU. That was the only reason I was able to go to LIU, was because I followed the previous coach who had scouted me. As that season progressed, I started to notice that the pitching coach that had first recruited me was going to leave LIU at the end of the year. It was just a stop for him. I took that very heavy because now I was left alone again, it felt like. My sophomore year came around. The coach had left that had helped me get to LIU, and I had not pitched well. I decided that instead of running away from my problems, I wanted to stay there and build a culture at LIU. My sophomore year, I started pitching a few more innings. We started getting a little more in tune. I was talking to my coaches on a more regular basis. We were able to discuss the things that were going on at home and on the field. We were really starting to click on all fronts. I had come into a situation where we had a very, very difficult conference tournament run-in. Bryant was in the Northeast Conference at the time. Bryant is a very, very skilled Division I baseball team, and it was the 12th inning, tie game. We decided that we needed every arm. I heard my name called, and I had to fall back on all the communication that I had with my coaches about them trusting me and me trusting myself. And I learned through the process to succeed in that moment. My junior year came after a great summer with the Appalachian League. I tore my elbow in the middle of the spring there. I fell into a deep, deep, dark place in my life where I was constantly trying to overcome injury and balance baseball with other things in my life. Things got a little out of hand. I decided that the next place I wanted to go, I wanted to be respected as a winning program. My transfer process to FIU was interesting after TJ. I hadn't had the innings that I necessarily was expecting to have, and I had to bet on myself. And I think that's where a lot of kids find themselves nowadays in the transfer portal, is betting on themselves in summer ball, which is why summer ball is so important. I had gone to the Northwoods League. I had had a little bit of success, but it was my first time pitching on a college mound in a year and a half. So I had to really limit how much I could throw. FIU, I had contacted FIU's head coach directly. I had also pitched in front of some colleges in Michigan, and that gave me a little bit of leverage. Talking to coaches, talking to others, being honest with myself. So I found myself at FIU that next year after deciding that FIU was going to commit the most to winning that I wanted to see. I was unaware of how much a new environment would affect me, would affect everybody around me, and would affect my perception of the coaches and of myself. So through that final journey at FIU was really probably the most important year of my entire college career, where I fell in love with the process and fell in love with baseball. And I think that that's something that a lot of athletes can channel within their first 2 years to have a better 3 or 4 years after that. Not to say that college should take you 6 years, but if it does happen that way, I think there can be ways that we can all maximize potential for those final years that you do play, because you never know when it'll end.
Yeah, I think you brought up something really, really interesting in that you're looking for this winning program. And when you were talking about when you got into college, you may be thinking that you can make an immediate impact. Talk about a little bit of the journey from walking on campus as a freshman and whether or not you are an immediate impact guy to flipping that mindset to be more team oriented and wanting to win. Because I dealt with the same thing, right? And my head coach always used to say, you can always say that you'd rather win than play until you're not playing, and then we get to see who you really are. I don't know if you dealt with like a moment like that where it really hit you, but if there was, what was that like, especially as you enter the transfer portal and that becomes your main priority rather than, am I going to just get a ton of innings here and that's just going to be that?
Right. I think that so many kids are fed this idea that they are always going to perform no matter what the circumstances. This happens a lot because of facility training and bullpens and reinforcement through the numbers, which we can talk about later. And the transition happens when you realize that people care so much more about the process in college baseball than they did in high school baseball, because talent doesn't take you as far as it did in high school. So the transition personally for me was, sure, I've got a harder fastball than a lot of guys here, and it's got a lot of vertical break. But if I can't throw it exactly where I want, college hitters are all good enough to take that pitch and to let it go by. And as I started to realize that I wasn't good enough, I started to realize that my playing time went down and I had to redefine my role. I think a lot of college students come in with the idea, or freshmen come in with the idea, that they could be the star closer. And you can, but it takes adaptability to your role. It takes adaptability to your coaches. It takes adaptability to your team. You no longer can be the sole reason that a team wins. And once you figure out that mindset, it doesn't matter if you're playing anymore, because you're contributing to a team success.
Yeah, and to your point, you brought it up a little bit. Baseball is obviously one of those sports that we put so much into the outcome because it's so failure driven. So you want to put stock in the successes, in those numbers that you talk about. Did you ever find yourself struggling, especially early in your career when you're, talking about kind of a culture shock jumping into college, a culture shock, an issue with focusing too much on the numbers and outcomes rather than figuring out what your process should be and then allowing that to feed outcomes that are desired? Because I feel like so much of it, we have these big goals and we have these big desired outcomes, and not just in baseball, but in life. And when you're so focused on that, we lose all the little things that get us there. But if you can detach yourself from that outcome, it can allow you to do so much more in your everyday process. So what was that like for you?
Absolutely. I love this question. So I think that everybody has an outcome goal that starts with some number that they want to hit. Whether it's, I want to throw 100. Every kid wants to throw 100, right? What we deny ourselves of is the little goals, as you said, that it takes to get there. I'm a 5'11", 185-pound right-handed pitcher. I also wanted to throw 100 miles per hour. I would have to do so much in order for that to happen. And it's so much easier for us as a society to blame others when we don't see those outcome goals than to accept that maybe we need to change something. So the best thing to do, in my opinion, was I had to realize that taking the outcome goal, splitting it up into two tangible, smaller goals, and then splitting those up into, well, how can we do it every day? if it's something as simple as I'm going to look at my bed and make it 8 a.m. every day, it may seem like something small, and yet it was an accomplishment that set me up to trust myself. I was no longer worrying about if I could throw 100. I was just worrying about if I could make my bed. Once I made my bed, then I could move on to doing a nice protein-filled breakfast. Once I did the nice protein-filled breakfast, I could go work out. But without doing that, without doing the initial act of making my bed, it might throw off my whole day. And when we focus so much on throwing 100, we've lost sight of the protein. We've lost sight of the workouts. We're so obsessed with trying to hit perfection that we lose a process that can create a miracle.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so with you. A lot of baseball comes with the fact that as you play, you can fall into a pattern of believing that you are your numbers, right? Like as an athlete, we're so heavily, on sense of urgency, trying to create things, make things happen, that your identity becomes your sport and your identity becomes your numbers. Did you ever find that happening to you early in your career? And it sounds like later in your career, you found some true confidence through all of these little processes, which is fantastic. But especially early on, I find that to be a very interesting piece that a lot of athletes struggle with, is thinking that they are their numbers rather than having baseball be an additive to their life, because at the end of the day, we all love the game, but somewhere along the line, it can get a little clouded.
So yeah, in my own life, this is so fun to talk about because I love TrackMan numbers. I love metrics. And yet, how much of that can we really change on a day-to-day basis? I couldn't just throw my fastball with a higher spin rate without doing something illegal, right? And so we're kind of told with a degree of certainty that perfection looks like these certain TrackMan numbers, these certain horizontal numbers. And when I was in high school, I gave so much thought into the numbers that I had defined myself less as a pitcher and more of like a high spin rate, top of the zone four seam guy with a big breaker. And I was complicating my process by doing that. And the second you expect perfection every time and consistency within the outcomes, within those numbers, you won't be granted that. There's a metaphor that I like to use about a tree. If you plant a tree seed and you are expecting a giant sequoia, the moment that that tree grows and it's not a giant sequoia tree, you're disappointed. If you plant a seed and you just expect any growth at all, the first sign of growth will excite you. I think that TrackMan numbers are a huge representation of the sequoia tree. And I think that our personal process is the foundational seed. When we look at TrackMan numbers now and all these metrics and numbers, we're looking at things that define us as a pitcher, but don't represent us as a human being. Realizing that took a lot of time and patience with myself and failure, if I'm honest. Realizing that I can't throw a fastball the exact same way every time, but I can take the steps before releasing that fastball to make it the most repeatable. And once you realize that it's the steps before and you can't change the conclusion, you start finding a process you can trust.
So as you start to trust that process, and as you got older and you talked about finding a winning culture in your last year, how much more did you enjoy baseball when all of that stuff started to click? Because I went through something similar where I was so frustrated and caught up with outcomes and numbers. And in my final year of baseball, I kind of just sat back and enjoyed the ride. And ironically enough, it was the least amount that I had played in my college career was my last year. And it was the most winning team I was on in my time. And it was the most fun I had in my time. And I feel like so much of it was that I just detached myself and I was like, this is the last time that I am ever going to play baseball. Let's take advantage of every single day, and whatever happens, happens.
I think a lot of kids nowadays are fed unreal standards about how they should take college baseball. I spent 4 years at LIU and we won 2 conference championships while I was there. I could tell you all the personalities of every guy that I played with because we were so focused on the 2 a.m. karaoke's, the outside of baseball stuff, the culture defining moments where we just had fun. So now winning, while being important, wasn't the only thing we cared about. On a Sunday night after a weekend game, and I'm not advocating for this unless you're of age, but let's say we all go out together and enjoy ourselves. I mean, who cares? Because at the end of the day, we're a team and we're a family and we should be able to bond no matter the outcome. And that's lost a lot of times because a lot of athletes nowadays don't want to just sit back and have fun and say, maybe this is my last time. Having the realization of baseball ends for everyone and only 0.0001% of baseball players retire on their own accord. Hall of Famers. At every other baseball player retires because it's too hard at one point. And it's about realizing that and coming to the realization that we can celebrate having played a career while still in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, and you're talking about, being able to sit back. When you were in college, how did you deal with that lack of playing time, or maybe struggling when you did get your playing time? Because in college baseball, if you go out for an outing, especially as an underclassman, when you don't have the innings under your belt and you don't have that coach trust, you may have a bad outing and not play for 3 weeks. Like, you can get sent to the back of the bullpen. You may not see the sun for a good portion of the season. So how did you deal with that early on? And then as you developed, how did those things change, and being able to still show up to the park every day excited, be able to work out excited, even if you knew you might not get a shot that weekend to throw?
It sounds cliche, but finding ways to have fun on the bench, finding a way to bond with your family, your team, finding a way to play some games that involve the game, things that we can do together as a team to help contribute to the most success. Everybody thinks winning is fun. And so if 40 guys were on a team that won 45 games, everybody's going to have fun. The times when people don't have fun is when everybody's worrying about everybody else. So it's so fun that, you talk about me I believe that other than the years I was hurt, my 5th year was the fewest amount of innings that I had thrown in a year. And it's important to analyze that because it's the happiest I've ever been playing baseball, just like you. And it was because I wanted to show up for my team. I wanted to show up to have fun with the guys. I wanted to show up because it was important to watch everyone succeed and everyone smile.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important, is understanding that when other guys succeed, you are succeeding in your own, especially in a team sport. And I think we get caught up so much with the individualized numbers, because baseball is a team sport made up of individual effort. So it's really easy to get caught up in that kind of thing. But understanding that when your teammates are winning, even if it is in turn costing you playing time, it is still a team win. And I think that's such an important piece of culture and being able to build a good foundation of a team. And it takes a lot of growing up to kind of get to that point, quite honestly. And it's something that, even though, we might have 18, 19, 20-year-olds listening to this, it probably may not even stick until you're 23, 24, sitting in your last year. And then you're going to think back on this, say, holy cow, they're right. Because that's kind of what it was for me. And getting to that last year, and it was, there are guys that are flat out better than me, but that's a good thing. because it's
Exactly.
leading to more wins and it's leading to a better culture. And I can still show up excited every single day, knowing that my name might not get called that day. And that's totally fine. Whereas when I was 18, and especially on a more losing team, it's really easy to point the finger and say,
Exactly.
well, I should have gotten a shot because we're not playing well as a collective. You start playing well, that culture shifts and everything starts to change, and you start enjoying the game like you did when we were 12 and 13. Because in high school, it's easy to get lost to that. You get so caught up in recruiting, and then you're in college and you get caught up in trying to play, or maybe you get caught up in trying to transfer up a division, or you get caught up in trying to go mid-major to P5. So there's so many things now that have added to that stress of being a college athlete. And I think it's so rare that we run into people that just enjoy it. And finally, things start to click and you just love what you do every single day, regardless of whether or not you're on the field or regardless of what your role is.
I think it's so important that you said this because, when I was a kid, I couldn't tell you any of my stats from middle school when I was playing major league with all my friends because I was just out there having fun. I threw harder than everybody else, and people wanted me on their team because of that. But I never did the perfect game showcases because I just wanted to have fun and win. And having fun was winning with my friends. It's hard to want to win when you don't have friends with you, if I'm completely honest. This is created by a selfishness within college programs right now, I think, and baseball in general, that you're better than the culture that you're in. I think it's created with the upbringing of track men, the upbringing of money contributing to facilities and how much facilities play into being scouted now. You're no longer focusing on wins. You're focusing on throwing as hard as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the travel ball piece, even in high school, does it. I
Mm-hmm.
now coach high school baseball, and it's such an interesting dynamic because I'm with freshmen, and it's their first time truly playing a team sport, quite honestly, because so many of the travel ball teams that they go and play for have 10, 11 guys where everybody plays 85% of the innings because you simply have to. And then you
Yeah,
get to high school and there's 15 guys on your team, and all of a sudden the goal isn't how often do I get to play? It's we're trying to win baseball games. And yes, your development is first and foremost. But at the end of the day, innings are all earned. And when you're on teams of 10, 9, 11, 12, your innings are kind of given to you. And it's kind of a
mhm.
dose of reality that I think a lot of guys don't get, because even when they do finish high school season, they all and go play for those same travel ball teams, very few of which play together. So it's kind of just the great scattering every summer with very small groups of guys.
I love that you mentioned current high school culture about pitching and the word develop, because we hear the word develop or projectability so much. And something that I had to realize was if a kid comes in and says, I just want to develop, well, what does that mean in the game? How are you going to develop in the game? How are you going to do that in a game? I don't want someone who's just constantly developing. I want people who are constantly learning, but will give you everything that they've learned so far. I think that in high school, especially, we're losing pitchers and we're gaining throwers. It's how hard can you throw at a showcase when no one's in the box, instead of how well can you paint this so that if you throw this pitch exactly where you want, they can't hit it. You don't need to throw 100. Again, I'm a 5'11", 185-pound righty. I couldn't overpower guys as much as others, and yet I found a way to have success. And I think that's denied so much because we're told that you have to look a certain way or be a certain person to throw hard, to succeed, to produce a certain number. And I just want to essentially be here to tell everybody you don't. Success is fully based on your perception of success. There is no such thing as failure if you're always learning. But if you shut off the mindset, the growth that you can have in each outing, you'll continue to output what you've been outputting, which is only your outcomes, not a new outcome with the same process.
I love that. So, kind of feeding into this, what advice would you give to current high school and college guys that are either struggling on the field, off the field, trying to find their way? Anything that you have dealt with throughout your playing career, what advice would you give to them?
My first piece of advice is to understand that you're never alone. Everybody deals with something. Second piece of advice, control the controllables. Coaches say it all the time. I'm not a coach. I'm a player. I will talk to you directly about controlling what you can control. You cannot control when you're put in the game. You can only control your response to when you're put in the game. And my third piece of advice, which I think is important just because there's a lot of stigma around the words mental health. If you are uncomfortable admitting that you have something going on in your life, you have no obligation to tell anybody except the person you're asking for help. No one will understand. No one would know that I'm going to therapy until I told all of you. And that's super important to recognize, is that you can recenter yourself, put yourself into your own shoes, ground yourself, see what's wrong in your life and fix it. And nobody will tell you that you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that therapy piece, I think it's so important. And while we have made unbelievable progress in that field in terms of athletics, I mean, I'm sure you can speak to it, especially even when you got into school. And I know when I first got into school in 2018, those conversations didn't really exist, and they didn't really start becoming more relevant until I was almost a junior in college. Like, sort of my sophomore junior year is kind of when that stuff was introduced to me. And if you had asked me at 17, 18, I think I would have kind of fallen into that stigma of like, well, I've got a good family and I love playing baseball. And so why would I need that? So I think it's just speaks volumes to where we have come in terms of athletics, but I still think there's a long way to go. And I think having people like you in the space that are advocating for it, and whether or not there is something wrong, even talking to sports psychologists, talking to therapists about what we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and talking about the stress that can be college athletics on top of school, on top of building personal relationships, because it's not just showing up to practice and games, it's workouts, it's extra work, it's all of
Yeah.
these things that play into it. It's even comes down to being meticulous about what you eat every single day. And until you kind of step back and realize that all of that is a ton of added stress into yourself, I think it's one of those things that is going to make the mental health in athletics field grow even more than where we've come so far.
Right. I think that a lot of kids today feel like they lack motivation. And I'm here to say that motivation is internal. You can't find it in external values. So, how can you make yourself want to be there? Have fun with it. Set smaller goals that are attainable. Challenge yourself in ways that aren't threatening. I also wanted to speak really quickly on, the stigma around mental health is that if someone says to you, "How's your mental health?" A lot of people would struggle to answer that in a truthful manner. But if you ask someone, "How are you feeling today?" they're much more likely to tell you exactly how they're feeling in that moment. So the stigma only exists around words. It's not around your feelings. You don't have to hide your feelings. Assigning the words mental health to this doesn't make it any different. You're still you. You're still that person. Mental health is a skill that we can learn to train. Our brain is a muscle that we can train. Mental health is the same as working out your body. We all do shoulder workouts. We all try and get as strong as we can, right? Treat your brain the same way. There's no problem with that. We all admit that we need to get stronger physically, so why can't we also get stronger mentally?
Absolutely. I love that. Before we wrap up, I've got a few more questions. We love summer ball around here. Summer ball brings some of my favorite memories playing the sport ever. Let's talk about your experience a little bit playing in both the Appalachian League and being in my neck of the woods in the Northwoods League. Just talk through some of those experiences and maybe some of your favorite pieces of those two leagues that you were able to be in.
Absolutely. Summer ball is the best brand of baseball, and here's why. It's the most authentic version of the player that you're getting. My experience in the Appalachian League was maybe the best I've ever had. It was the first year, I believe, maybe the second year, that the Appalachian League had turned from a minor league or an independent league into a collegiate summer ball league that was related to the MLB. So we had, I mean, I have unbelievable memories. I played Oklahoma State's catcher, Ian Daughtry. That was my catcher. Oh my goodness. I've played with some names and I'm just like, wow, I can't even imagine being at that level, you know? And yet we were all on the same team together. And that's, I think, the beauty of baseball is like everybody was there like, how are you at this school? How are you at this school? How are you at this school? Because we're all assigned these values based on school, and then we all come together and we just have fun and we just play. And it feels so much like that middle school ball, that high school ball. In the Appalachian League, I don't know. I'm not going to lie. I started off ridiculous. Like I had something like I had 14, 15 innings and like 0 earned runs and 28 strikeouts at one point. Like I was on an insane run. And then one of the biggest things for me was I got back to school. This was before I tore my elbow. And they were like, whatever you did in the Appy League, just do it here. And you want to know what I did? I had fun. That's what summer ball is. Gosh, like the Northwoods, so much travel, but wow, was it so much fun. Best coaches I've seen in a long time. They will always absolutely do anything for you, and wow, do they want to win. And maybe that's why I love summer ball so much, is because they all are just so committed to winning. Everybody there is just having fun. And yet, you know, that's the beauty, is none of the players are thinking about winning all the time. The players are just focused on having fun, and the coaches are focused on winning. And it creates this vibe, especially in the Northwoods, of like so much competition and so much like, wow, we're on a grind right now. And bringing that together in the Northwoods is so cool. And I think it's why the Northwoods, every kid should try and go to the Northwoods at some point. I know it's a very good league. I understand that. But the Northwoods is such a grind, and it teaches you so much about yourself.
I love that. Having roommates that played in the Northwoods for pretty significant stints and knowing a lot of people in that run, I have just heard absolute war stories about being in there for a full
Yeah.
season. So that is a very accurate representation of what it's like, but never heard bad things about it. It's a great league, and I'm around those teams all the time. I'm able to go to those games, and the crowds are rowdy. We know Wisconsin people love to drink, so it
Oh
gets
my
wild up here.
goodness.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the fields are pretty good. Very good. Appalachian League fields are also ridiculously nice. Summer ball is awesome, man. I wish I could just play summer ball for the rest of my life. Actually, it's awesome. I'm a huge advocate for summer ball. If you have this is a lost art too, by the way. More kids are saying that they don't want to play summer ball now. Did you know this?
Yeah, a lot of kids just want to go train in the summer. They take half the summer off and then train the back half of summer leading up to
Nobody
fall.
wants to play baseball anymore. I'm like, what are we doing? No, sorry. Everybody wants to play baseball. I want to play baseball. We all want to play baseball. But I think at the end of the day that if you want to get experience, if you want to succeed, you got to play. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Can't advocate enough for it. I was also like that when I was in school. Is play as much as possible. Let's go play 60 games in a summer and see what happens.
yeah, I want to give a quick story. My last ever pitch that I threw on a college mound was in Houston. There's a video of it somewhere. There has to be, although it wasn't streamed. Just for everybody here to know, my last ever pitch on a college mound was in Houston versus Sam Houston. I got heat exhaustion in the ninth inning of a blowout game, and I ended up puking on the mound. Okay. The only reason I'm stopping right now is because my body said I couldn't go anymore. I think all of us should have that. Play until you can't, because you will miss it. I miss it. And my body is in shambles, but I miss it every day. Go play, go have fun. Don't put the pressure on yourself to go hit a number. A number isn't what's going to get you more innings. Having fun and playing is what is going to get you more innings.
Yeah, leading off that, now that you're out and you have had, well, I don't know if you've had that much time. You've had maybe 2 weeks to reflect on some things, but what is your favorite baseball memory, or what is the thing you're going to miss the most about playing now that it's kind of wrapped up and I'm sure it's starting to sink in a little bit more?
Wow. The hotel trips. I'm going to miss the fact at LIU for 4 years, we had some, can I swear on this podcast?
Sure. I
We
think
had
so.
we had some bullshit bus rides. I mean, 20 hours down to Georgia at one point. We're going down there, coming back up on 3 days because we can't afford the flight because it's a grind. And let me tell you, I will never forget that. I will never forget driving all the way down there with my boys, playing Nintendo Switch on the road, and then winning one game felt like we were winning a championship. Winning one game now felt like we could all just celebrate. And that is what I'm going to miss the most, is winning with 40 guys behind me, winning with 40 guys in front of me, winning on these long bus rides. Like we had, even on the days that we lost, we had a win because we could celebrate together. And I think that that's what I'm going to miss most, is having that sense of like winning with 40 guys every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting out of that team environment is honestly one of the more difficult pieces. I think
Yeah.
athletes transitioning out of college sports, it is not talked enough about how difficult that transition is until you're out of it, until 6 months, a year even goes by, and you're like, holy cow, now what? So,
Absolutely. I mean, hey, I'm doing, obviously, I went viral and I'm doing this. I'm one of probably, I mean, I don't know how many kids probably ended their college careers, right? Right around the time that I did, ended their baseball careers right around the time that I did. I'm just one example of millions and millions and millions of stories. And guess what, guys? I still am technically unemployed. So this is the transition out of baseball is real. Like there is a period of time where you don't really know what you're doing. And I'm here to tell you that that's okay.
yeah, so before we wrap up, what's next for you?
I've got a couple of things. I really want to advance mental health within baseball. I want to find ways to do that. I want to try maybe to talk to colleges about it, try and get the word out there more, because I think conversations like this is how we extend the knowledge to others. So that's something on my list. I would love to coach. I love kids. I love helping people. I'm also looking to get an EMT certification to work in ambulatory care. And hopefully at one point in my life, I'll go to med school and become a sports psychiatrist so I can just do this and help more people.
I love that. Well, Shane, thanks for jumping on. We've taken up enough of your time today, but this is an incredible conversation. I hope you people out there really enjoyed this one as much as we did. Be sure you are subscribing to the podcast, liking the YouTube video, wherever you're getting this, and we'll see you next time with the whole crew.